If there isn't and you need more stuff, the bread patterns are here, right? The chalices are in the middle door. There's a key that makes this door locked almost always, so if then in case you come in here and the Father hasn't unlocked it yet, this is where that key is, and so on and so forth. This, by the way, is also where the key to the tabernacle is, so keep that in mind. The tabernacle's keys in here through this door. So a couple of different things that you use that for. Last thing you need to check is make sure that if you're a chalice person, you need one of these purificators. So you need those. So just checking for all those three things. And we may have.
Don't mess it up. It'll take a lot of work.
You didn't see that happen? You did not see me do that. All right. So this is for my sake right here. All right, is there any questions about the sacristy piece of this? All right. So we talked about the pre-mass. All right. Let's go ahead and just file into seats, and we'll have to be quiet until they leave a little bit, or at the very least they're done taking pictures, but then once they're done snapping pictures, we're rolling. So it's like a plan. All right, so you can go ahead and find your seats.
We already started in the cryo. Father, we have a question about hand sanitizer. So the question is, when should people do the hand sanitizer? There was an issue, I think, this morning where people think they didn't have enough time to get the hand sanitizer before you hand the patent to people. So do you have any preference? Do we, like as they walk up, hand sanitizer? After they receive hand sanitizer? Do what you want?
I don't have
Okay.
I don't mind standing. I don't do everything the same way. Yeah, just if I handed it to you too soon, that was on me. So I can get the time. The sanitizer on there and for it to evaporate before. I don't mind.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So we were at the point where we were talking about people lining up, right, and then receiving and the hand sanitizer. So you have a question?
Make a decision as to honoring receiving communion and then going to sanitizing. Is that?
You want to? Yeah, we can make it.
We made a decision because I do understand, I guess, the sense of the communicating, receiving communion, getting close to my mouth, whatever. Some people sense I'd like to honor that sensitivity.
Right.
I guess I'm encouraging us to go that route, but I didn't hear if we made a decision or not.
Well, let's try it with after you receive. Go ahead and try to get the sanitizer, and just work with the priest that day, and so on and so forth. And just the priest will. One of these things is that as we're trying to do all these things too, there's going to be those moments where like, oh, what? There was a mistake. So there's sometimes where that happens, and we'll once we get used to it, won't be a problem. So I think let's try the sanitizer after you receive. I think that'll work. Okay. So the ordering of how this is all going to work is very important, though, because when there's chalices, and this is really what today's about, is getting us back into that mold. When you receive the body, the order can be all kinds of jumbled. But with the blood, what the plan is that Father is going to take one chalice and just hands you your stuff as normal. So he hands people the chalices, he hands people the bread patens, and then you go to your stations. Is there any questions about any of that? Very good. The stations. Father and another bread person stand here. Generally try to stand near the step, and that's something that I was not doing very well yesterday. You stand kind of back to the steps so that there's plenty of room for people to walk up, receive, and then plenty of room for them to walk around here. When there's chalices, I would recommend kind of splitting the difference right here and then standing like this with it. Because again, the idea is you want people to have plenty of space to A, receive the blood if they wish, or B, pass, and then if there's two people doing it at the same time, right? If you're a bread minister over at these mid-side aisles, left side maybe, because again, the idea is that people are filing in and walking in a circle, right, so that you want to kind of give them room, and so it all looks really, really smooth and nice, and there's nobody bumping into each other and things of that nature. And then blood person about here, near the far side. That's been, I believe, how it worked in the past, right? Any questions about that? Good. When you're carrying, I like 2 hands on the bread patents for stability's sake. But then when you're administering to people, you go to 1 hand, right? And then when you're administering the body to people, you take a host, you lift it, you elevate it, and you say the body of Christ. That can't be any other way. You just say the body of Christ. There was a question yesterday about can we say names, and it's recommended that you don't do that because then there's people that might be guests or people's names that you don't know, and then they feel left out, kind of a deal. So we don't want to be doing that to people. Body of Christ. And then you usually wait for them to say amen. And of course, you want to try to keep a watch out for them to receive it. If not, you might say a general reminder. But the theme that's going to be popping up is don't take too much time with a lot of, okay, if you see somebody doing it maybe a little bit weirdly or things of that nature, just keep the procession moving and leave those special situations to talk to a priest after Mass. So that's going to come up quite a few times. The chalice and the purificator, yeah.
One of the things I asked Father about was when people come up and they want it on the tongue, Father Rob suggested I switch the chalice to my right hand and give it with the left. And then when it go back to people standing. Am I right, Father?
Yeah, that's what I did when the hiding coat, I would switch hands. But what is it, ambidextrous?
Yeah.
So I do that. And it's not something that you necessarily have to do. What are you comfortable with?
Right, but I thought that was a good suggestion.
Right.
That's something you can do.
So that's an extra idea, yeah. You switch hands as necessary, and that's going to come up again as another thing that we talk about. Question here?
How do we handle, I know, when people want to do intinction?
We will not do intinction for now. That might be something in the future. People cannot intinct themselves, so it's got to be done, I believe, by a priest or something of that nature. But you can't self-intinct. So again, an idea: if you see somebody doing that, slight suggestion. Not in that case. In that case, you just go to Father after Mass and you say, and you tell what you saw, and let the priest deal with those kinds of confrontational situations. The theme here is that we don't want you all to have to deal with that kind of stuff. That's the priest's job. So if there's,
You know what that is? Is that dipping?
yeah, you dip the body in the blood.
Mm-hmm. Can there be, when we're going back to under both species, can that actually be announced? Because
That's what we're going to do, is I'm going to go over
yeah, thank you.
just some
Just so they know.
reminders of how to receive communion, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And John was even brought up yesterday, so I'll gently talk about it. Although I know there's some people that, for medical reason, so I'll kind of address those issues, but
Thank you.
if they happen during Mass, it's not your job to catechize the person. But that's what I mean, you can do it in a loving way, and if it doesn't work, then go with it, and then tell the priest, and it'll be our job to talk with that person about that.
What about the gluten-free? Because that had to happen when I was on another aisle. Are we allowed to just go out and get one or come to each?
Yeah, whatever, you can go get one.
So it doesn't matter. We can distribute that as well.
Yeah, and I'll also mention that too when we talk about receiving. Because reminding folks we have gluten-free. It's usually the priest's line. If they do come to you, you can send them over to me. You can come over to me and get one, or you can go to the altar if they're out there.
Okay.
And get it. Again, just whatever you choose to do is fine.
Right. The chalice and the purificator. I'd recommend, well, of course, when you're walking around with it, have kind of a two-hand situation with the purificator over the top. Do the best you can with that. And patience and slow, and not going too fast is always fine. Just making sure that you're not spilling and dropping things, right? And then I would recommend holding it about where the stem is, right here. And the reason for that is that you would then have somebody that would receive it like this, and it's easy, and they can do two hands because they're not so used to it as you all are, right? So you can kind of move this around a little bit more, you're in more control, and you're doing it a lot more, so you can have one hand. And then when they give it back to you, there's an easy spot for you to grab, and so you just keep doing it kind of like that, right? Purificator would then be in your other hand ready to wipe. for each person that you give it to. So the idea is that you're going to hold here at chest height once they come up to you and are looking to receive the blood of Christ, and then you hand it to them. And then when you take it back from them, you're going to wipe where the lips touched. When there's more wine, you maybe only do a little bit, but if it's more empty, don't feel free to kind of get into the cup a little bit with the purificator and wipe. You can get in there a little bit and so on and so forth. Then make sure to turn it a little, quarter turn, right? So that even with the wiping, the person's not touching where somebody else just drank from for a minute, right? So you keep turning after each person. So is there any questions about that? Good. A lot of this stuff, by the way, is most of you who are ministers, this is just reminders, right? So you all know this stuff, so we're just kind of rehashing the same things. So that's the basic idea of what's happening. Now we get to talk about some details. Yes, here we go. So, say that somebody's coming up and you're not sure if they're in a state of grace or if they're Catholic. What do you do? Oftentimes it's sort of nice to just pop a quick question, are you Catholic? Or, if it's a younger kid, they might have a parent or a guardian coming up to them saying, have they received First Communion? Are they ready to go? You know what I mean? Just a quick little question of, are they ready to, are they okay to receive? And then they give you an answer and you either give them communion or there's a blessing piece. The other aspect is if somebody comes up and crosses their arms, what do you do? And is not able to receive the communion but comes up. You can give them a blessing. You just say something like, God bless you. You can say, may God bless you. May God always be in your heart. There's a few variations on a theme on that, but you can use what's in the packet or maybe come up with your own if you're a creative person. You can do any of those. So, yes?
Hand out?
Yeah. You can put your hand out too. And so there's variations on a theme on that. If you're unsure if the person's in a state of grace, we had somebody coming up and saying, like say you see gum in the mouth and things of that nature, or this stuff like that. The general rule is always give communion, even if you're unsure, and then talk to Father afterwards. So if you're thinking if you know this person said something maybe that was a little bit out of line or something like that, or you're not sure if they fasted properly or things of that nature, that's not something to worry about in the communion line. And if you're really, really seriously worried about that, you talk to the priest. But just right now, just give communion and let the catechesis. We talked about that earlier, so similar stuff there. Let's see here. Depending on the Mass, there may be musicians in the back, there may be physically impaired individuals, there may be people sitting in our chapel back here. How it worked in the past is when your first line was finished, and usually it's this side's that's going to get done first, so that pairing, and you're thinking about blood, body, these two are like one unit. So when this line is done, or this section of people is done, you're probably going to go back into the day chapel. If sometimes an usher will be there to remind you if you forget or things of that nature. There's musicians that might need it, so you'll have an usher that will come up and start directing, hey, here's who else needs communion and things of that nature. And sometimes the usher remembers to do that, sometimes they may forget, but just kind of keep that in mind. When you start moving around, it's both body and blood. Just give people the option. If they say no, that's fine, but you don't want to do something where like the child's people are like, they're not going to receive it. And they're like, you know what, I was thinking about having the blood that day. And then they didn't have the option to do it, which, just give them the option and then bite the bullet, so to speak, right? Is there any questions about any of the things that we just went over right there? Very good. In the case of dropping or spilling, what do you do? Say that you drop a host on the floor. You immediately pick it up, and then you'll separate it in a hand, and then continue to administer to the line until you get a chance and Father is available to then address the situation. So you might finish your line if you're here and you've dropped the host up, you have your host, and then you've got the paten holding in this hand while you're administering. And then you finish, Father finishes, you walk up to him and say, there's this host. If it's still enough okay to eat, it might just be consumed right there. Father might just consume it right there. If not, and it's seriously soiled, Father will then tell you, hey, this is what we're going to do with this, and go from there. But just talk to the priest of that day. And then the blood. Sometimes there's spilling with the blood, and depending on the spill, you do different things. So say it's a few drops, and it can be cleaned up with your purificator. You immediately pick it up. The theme is that when something happens like that, you immediately address it. Okay, you don't want Jesus on the floor for too long, so you can you immediately get down with the purificator and you blot out the drops. Okay, and it shouldn't take too long, and then you just go back to normal. If it's a larger spill where the purificator can't cover it, the towel, right, and so if they can't cover it, what you do is you get down, you clean up as much of it with that purificator as you can. Then you go back into the sacristy and get more. Before you do that, you want to direct people in your line to somebody else. So you're going to get down, clean up as much, then say, if you want wine, go there, or go to this station right here. For example, if I was right here, I would just say, go here for now. And then you go back, you get more purificators to clean up the mess, and then you clean up the rest of it. And then depending on what happens, if there's still wine in your chalice, then you can have another purificator ready to go and then administer again. If there's not, then you just take the chalice up to the altar. Okay. Is there any questions about that? That's all about administering communion to the congregation. So now what we do is we talk about what happens afterwards, right? So after everybody's received and everybody's been given that opportunity, if you're a bread or a body or a blood minister, what you're doing is you're taking your paten, even if it has hosts left in it, or you're taking your blood or your chalice with the blood, and you're just taking it back here. The body people go on this side, the blood people go on this side, in the same way that you lined up before. It just helps out Father without having too much clutter on one side of the altar and preventing some cluttering and some spilling on the altar and things of that nature. What you're then going to do is you're going to wait for the priest to clean up and then hand you back the vessels and so on and so forth. With a chalice, that's easy because he just has to get the blood out of there and clean each chalice, and then he gives it back to you. And then what you do is you go to the sacristy via the back. You'll genuflect here, or really, since you're carrying something, you can bow at this, and then you just go back into the sacristy this way. That might be a little different than what the packet says. The packet was recommending that there was some intricacies to that, but don't worry about that now. Right now, we're just kind of doing things. This is mostly how things were done in the past. So just get up to the altar with the chalice and let the priest do the work for now, and get the blood out of the chalice is really the idea there. That's what the goal and the key is. If you're a body minister, you may have to do a little bit more. There's a chiborium in the tabernacle, the container that holds the consecrated hosts. So if Father needs one of you to go back there, you just wait there, you listen for instructions to say, for example, we had that, so Father Bankis goes, can you get the chiborium, please? And then somebody would go back there into the tabernacle. The key's usually on there, but again, we talked about it might be in the sacristy, so you might have to go back into the sacristy and get it. You unlock the tabernacle doors and you get the chiborium out for Father, and then you come back to the altar, and so on and so forth. Once Father gets all the body out of each of these patens, then he'll hand them back to you, and then you go into the sacristy. Is there any questions about any of that?
Are you trying to move the unit, or is each one's handed back?
What did I say yesterday? I think I said
the same way we've been doing it, right?
Yeah, the same way we've been doing it. So I can't remember if it was this use unit, right?
It would be as a unit.
Yeah, as a unit. As a units.
Because you're going to have, it's not just the scoring, you have the gluten-free
Right.
with the lid on the top, and then you have the gluten-free with the lid on it. That's the extras. So sometimes all three of those things are brought out, and you need more than 2 units. So if you do that together, just like you've been doing that, we just keep that part the same.
Yeah, that's really not, none of that's going to change right now. So what you've been doing is the same idea. We're just going over it. Yes?
So for the precious blood in the past, we used to wash the cups.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So the idea is that usually I think what's happened is that you would take it to the sacristy and then wash it there, and then you would return to your seats. We're going to switch that. So you take the patens and the chalices, and you're going to put them on that counter near the sink. But then you'll go. What you'll do is you'll just You're going to wait until all your 7 ministers are back in there, and then you all come out through this and through this door. And then when all 7 are you there, you bow as a unit, and then you go to your seats. And then what that will do is that will allow for the Mass to get done a little bit quicker. Now, this might be a change from beforehand, so as I'm saying this, it might be a situation where the vessels, you purify the vessels anyway, but that's one of the changes in here that was talked about. It's just that way what happens is that after Mass, the priest will take care of that, but you can help him after the Mass. But then it also allows, you say that you have to get somewhere because there's an emergency or something like that. You can leave too, and you're not required to go help the priest and things of that nature. Yes?
Okay, so after the priest hands us back the unused host and all, we take it back, put it in the tabernacle, and then lock it back. We come back in and get our patents. You're saying for the Eucharist, the body, when you distribute the precious body, then we carry those patents back to the sacrament.
That takes those
Yeah.
patents off of the altar. Father usually puts the patents to the right and the servers to the left.
Yeah, so the servers will do that. So what I said was,
The patents.
ignore what I said. Servers will take the patents.
Okay.
Because they clean the altar right now, so you're right. You're right. So that's right. So you're mostly focusing on making sure that the hosts get into the tabernacle, and then you go into the sacristy. So yeah, that's my bad. The chalices are the ones that do take their things back because those will need to be purified. All right, that covers everything. So.
Yeah, I just go over it one more time. When distributing the blood amongst the ministers up front. I'm just speaking to this. So in the past, one minister would administer all of like the musicians or everyone standing on the right. But we're changing that for this time, right? So then, once the first minister, blood minister, receives it, we're serving all the other blood ministers, correct, down the line, and then Father will serve the people who are standing on this side of the altar.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you address if there's blood left in the chalice after you're done?
Yeah, that's a good time to talk about it. When there's blood left in the chalice, it's recommended that you drink what's left, but you do not have to do that. Regardless of your choice, you go up there to the altar with your chalice. So you can drink it, or you can leave the priest do it. Depending on the priest, there's some that are willing to do it, like our pastor here. He's fine with drinking whatever is left from all the chalices. But if it's not the case, if that's not the case with the other priests, or say that Father Rob's sick that day or just not feeling it, then he'll tell you that I need some help with this today, so just in case. And so what ends up happening is that you may split it, or even if you're still not comfortable, ask one of the other Eucharistic ministers. They might be more comfortable doing that, and then they can drink some extra. So that's how that works.
It has to, while you're still at the altar.
It has to be emptied up.
You should really be doing it as soon as the line finishes is when you address that. And so if you're not going to drink it, that's fine, but then you take it up to the altar and then Father's going to clean it out. But if you're going to drink it then. Drink.
Blood being taken to the drink.
Yeah, that's correct. And the reason is that the priest has to clean all of that out at the altar and do the ablution prayer right there. And that has to happen during the Mass. So that's why it's important that we handle that now here. And that's the idea. I think that's how that worked in the past too, so that's the idea there.
Do we have a sense of how many people will be comfortable? Like, are we going to start with a small amount in the first Masses?
That's a good question. I was just going to say that we have no idea.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with a small amount, and then we're going to need your help in letting us know if we have the right amount, if we have too much, and we're just going to have to kind of play that by ear. But we're going to start out with a little, because the idea is not to have a lot left over.
Right.
So that's what we'll just need your feedback on.
And if we do finish, or, before our line is finished, do we stay there and, put the purificator over the chalice, or do we just, if the body is still being distributed, but we've run out of blood, how do we indicate
We
that?
used to go back up to the altar and
just
sort of
take it up right
indicated
then.
that there was none here in
Okay.
case someone wanted to. I mean, I'm just saying and tossing it up because
No, that's what we were going to do there.
Yeah, it's probably better that you go back up.
Just go
That
straight
way
up.
you don't have people coming to you. Some may not know the international sign of my line.
Yeah, that's right. And another thing too is you could also direct too, if they still see somebody being able to do it, maybe kind of a deal, so you could direct that way too, and so on and so forth. But yeah, definitely get up to the altar. It's kind of obvious at that point.
Father, how do you handle when people come up to the chalice to receive the body, the blood of Christ? How do you handle it when they want to do the indenture?
I would tell them that only I can do that. And if they want me to do that for them, I'll be happy to do that.
So what can we do?
It's up to you, really. What are you comfortable doing?
Snap your hand. Is that allowed? No, but I've had it. I just put my hand in.
and new and having it again. I would imagine that there will be more people that
Well,
choose to
that's why I'm hoping to address that.
That's true.
Right.
But here's my thinking is I want them to leave here feeling good about being here. And I don't want their experience to be, regardless of right or wrong, then that to be their thought. And so that's why I caution you about, if you're going to say something, do it as lovingly as you possibly can. But otherwise, it's not your battle to fight. That's something that we have to address in catechisis. The communion line is not the time for catechesis.
We can't even take it from them.
Right, you're not supposed to do that. If that is an issue, you let me know, and then I can address it too. In general, just to remind us that the
It only
idea
has
is.
happened once, but it's awkward because I know it's really not.
Yeah, it did before COVID. It was very rare to see that, and then I know COVID kind of brought a lot of that back. But hopefully, we won't have to deal with it as much.
There was something that I wanted to talk about, and I'm forgetting what I wanted to talk about.
That's called God's grace.
Just saying, let's get this over with.
That's how I interpret it for myself.
Yeah, that's what it is. We got a question again.
It's a silly question, and I don't know. I remember in the past hearing there was one part of the altar we're supposed to walk on, and are we not supposed to go behind the altar or in front of the altar, or does it matter?
Well, what I would say is that I don't think there's much of a preference. You have to make sure that you reverence the altar, but and this obviously comes up when you're going to your stations, right? So say that the bread ministry needs to cross. Don't worry about crossing in front of it, for example, and things of that nature. Just, and things of that nature.
And we can go behind it too, though, where the priest stands at. Sorry.
The only time that I know what you're talking about, that they don't want you standing behind the altar is when you go to line up and the priest is saying his prayers, because they don't want people to be confused as to who's the priest and who's not. So they ask you to line up on the side as opposed to the front. But when you're moving around up there to take things back or whatever, don't worry about behind the altar, or you're fine doing it.
And so long as, especially in regards to when you're coming up, you reverence the altar with a bow, and it's the altar that you're going to reverence during the Mass. So once you do that once, walk around. Because you've already reverenced at that point, and you're working now. So you're moving around. You don't need to be like, oh, shoot, I crossed it at this perpendicular angle of 90 degrees. Now I got to bow again, and things of that nature. Or I crossed the center, and you know what I mean. You don't have to worry about that because you're up there working and doing the ministry. So.
I have another question, sorry.
Shoot the question. This is the question and answer time.
Blood distribution. Have you or are you going to take like a poll of which ministers are fine with doing that, or if there's some that aren't?
Yes, so we took one that was...
I know we're balanced when we're scheduled.
Yes, we took one back in, what was it, December? Maybe January and things of that nature. There were a lot of people that were okay with it. There's some people that maybe don't feel comfortable taking the blood, but they still like to minister. And then there's a few people that just don't feel comfortable. And so the idea is that when we're signing up on Ministry Scheduler Pro, right now it's just a list of Eucharistic ministers, and my idea is that you talk about it in the back. That allows for the individuals that maybe don't feel comfortable to say, I'm not feeling comfortable, can I do the body today? Kind of a deal. So that makes it easier. I I would find. But if you really would like me to differentiate between who's doing body and blood that day, I'll try to make that happen too. So it's more up to if you all want that and things of that nature. Sometimes I like it where, you know what, I'm kind of feeling not assigned to this, and then I just want to change it the day of, and I don't really have a preference either way on that. But some people like the organization, so that's more of what you all want. Let's see here, any other questions? And then just reminding for the video piece of it, so 15 minutes before Mass to help out with who's here, who's not, from the sign-up things, and addressing then maybe if you need to get an extra minister. Dress code, Sunday best. Doesn't need to be a fancy suit or tie or big fancy dress that you might wear on Easter, but don't wear your couch clothes and jeans, and need to be a little bit nicer if they're going to be jeans and things of that nature. No holes and things of that nature. You want to go into the sacristy and check in with the priest when you come in here. Make sure that he knows you're here. You check to see how many Eucharistic ministers are on the list. You check to see if there's enough things out on the credence table for that day. And you pray with the ministers, you pray with each other and with the servers, electors, and the priest will lead the prayer in the sacristy. And then you sit amongst the pews wherever you would like. And then you follow Mass as normally as you would until the Lamb of God starts, and then you're coming up. Any final questions about anything today? Yes, so and let me get that chalice again. It doesn't need to be a big turn, like you don't need to go like all the way around too much, but yeah, after you give it and take it back, you wipe, and then you turn a little bit.
And then you try to move the cloth.
Wipe with a different spot in the purificator.
Yes.
Otherwise you're wiping the city.
What do you mean? There's a problem with that? Yes, wipe in different spots with the purificator and things of that nature. And so do the best you can with that.
Purificator should be spotted red. The purificator,
Should be a red
on it, so you have more space to.
You can tell that I'm not a Eucharistic minister, just by the way. Yeah, so you can open it up like this, and then you have a lot of variance.
Then you have.
And so on and so forth. And then when you're folding the back up, just follow the creases, the best of your ability. And that's more really for whoever's helping out purifying the back, because if it's empty, you just stick it in here, right? Or if there's still, you know what I mean? So once the chalice is empty, you just kind of stick the purificator in there, and then because it's a sign of, okay, this needs to be taken care of, kind of a deal. So.
But that's going back on the altar that way.
Yeah. So first things when the line's done. And then you either drink it or you don't, but then you take it up to the altar. Father needs to do his piece with it, then he'll give it back to you. And then you take it back to the sacristy, and with your purificator, you'll just put it in there. That's the.
Put the purificator. No, it's not. No, on the altar.
When you're on the altar, yeah, I would just hang on to it because he's going to give this back to you, right?
Okay.
And then you'll take both back into the sacristy right there.
Are you saying we're supposed to see if there's enough posts for that Mass? Is that what you said?
No, so say that you have 5 Eucharistic ministers. You're just checking to make sure there's like 5 patens, or sorry, not 5, 3 patens, and then there's 2 chalices with purificators ready to go for people.
Thank you.
That's all that is.
Okay.
Don't worry, the priest is supposed to worry about the host numbers, right?
That's why I asked.
So,
That's Monsignor's job.
yeah, it's Monsignor's. Thanks everyone for coming today. And if there's any other questions that you have, just send me an email. And then we have 2 more that popped up.
Is there an official commissioning? I didn't know if there was any kind of blessing ceremony, anything that we're not yet advocating.
Yeah.
There is, but you also have my permission to do that. It's really all that you need. But what I would like to be able to do at some point in the future, when there's not a lot going on in Mass, is to invite those who volunteer to stand up and give them a blessing in front of the parish. But I think that's the commissioning, but it's not necessary, just my commission is. But I will, and we'll do it at each Mass, so you don't have to come to one specific Mass. But it's just a way to recognize them and thank people for their gifts.
Absolutely. And then there was
When is it starting, the next quarter after?
Easter Vigil Mass is the plan. So and right now, if you look at the schedule, Easter Sunday has 7, and then the rest of the weekend Masses have 7. The Easter Vigil does not yet, but I'm going to make that edit. So, but yeah, the plan is Easter Vigil. We thought it'd be nice for the new people coming into the church to have the option to have that blood, which would be cool. So that's the idea.
We're not signed up, we sign up on a wizard or something?
Yes, I will. You and all who raise your hand if you're new today. Yeah, so see me afterwards and we'll talk about that, because we need to get you into the system, and then you're going to be able to sign up and see how all that works. Thanks everyone again for coming today. You can keep those packets.